Hello and welcome to For Pet's Sake, Feeding Them Well. I'm Lisa Faulkner, and in this series, we're diving into the world of pet nutrition, exploring what we feed our pets, why it matters, and how it impacts their health, happiness, and overall well-being. Today, we've got a very special duo joining us. Greg Rutherford is an extraordinary athlete whose unforgettable Olympic gold on that legendary Super Saturday made him the first British man in 48 years to win the long jump. He went on to add a grand slam of titles, including World, European, and Commonwealth, making him one of the true greats of British athletics. But away from the medals, Greg is a proud dad of three and a devoted pet parent. Here today with his much loved Whippet Clunkers, and joining us too is Dr. Brendan Clarke, raw feeding advocate and vet expert, who'll be sharing his knowledge about how important nutrition is for pet health. Greg, Clunkers, and Brendan, welcome.
Thank you very much for having us. Clunkers is very happy. I mean, she's literally laying on her arms now, just happy just to have a little sleep.
She's just so gorgeous. I actually don't know whether to start with you or Clunkers because I'm sort of really torn here. But I am going to start with you, Greg, because you have had the most amazing career, and you were the first. For me, I just have to say this. It's all about me. That I didn't really care about athletics and
Most
the
people don't.
Olympics until I watched you.
Ah,
And
that's
it
lovely
was
to hear.
it was amazing, and to watch you with my daughter, who was really little at the time, and we were just cheering you on. And so, obviously we've met before
Absolutely,
this,
yes.
and I think I fangirled then, but
No,
it's
it was the
just
other way around, I think. No, but it's a fascinating thing, isn't it? And the thing is now, like, I struggle to jump out of bed in the morning, to be totally honest. So
yeah,
the idea of throwing myself into sand feels like an absolute eternity ago. But yeah, I mean, amazing time. I'm still incredibly proud. Achieved way more than I ever expected to achieve in my career. So it's very nice now to look back and
yeah.
yeah, look back fondness and be reminded of it as well. Because again, before you know it, as you mentioned, dad of three plus the animals, the kids, they're not as interested really in what I used to do. I'm just dad to climb on and beat up most of the time. That's what it feels
And
like. So
they will get to a point, because I think my daughter's never been interested in it. I mean, literally couldn't care less about anything I've ever done. And then somebody said, "Oh, that I'd done this acting job," and she was like, "You didn't tell me you were in the Harlan Coben series with Ashley Walters." And I was like, "Yeah," and she was like, "Oh my God, right." And she was suddenly a bit like happy about me being her mum, whereas
yeah,
before she couldn't care less.
I'm waiting for
But
that.
it's taken 18 years, so
So I've got a few left. The eldest is 10 now.
yes.
Then we got 8 and 4. So we've got a while, I can imagine, still until I'm
Exactly.
in any way cool to them.
But your Olympic career, athletics for you, obviously, what you look at and how you feed yourself, your diet is imperative. It's super important.
Yeah, massively important. I mean, it's one of the most important things, I would say, just to get your body right and firing each day. And that's something that I think, especially in my early career, I massively didn't follow correctly and sort of overlooked hugely. Because until I joined the coach that I had, a guy called Dan Paff, from about 2009 through to the end of my career, so for about 10 years, I didn't really take it seriously. I knew it was an important thing, and I didn't eat rubbish all the time. But I mean, I remember we used to have a challenge of how many different cereals you could fit in your bowl in the morning. We'd be on a training camp in America, South Africa, wherever it would be. And that became one of the things, like, oh, we've managed to get 6 different cereals in and eat. I mean, it didn't taste that great, but that was part of that mindset of nutrition wasn't as important as it was, if that
Yes.
makes sense. So in our heads, it wasn't as important as it was. So we sort of overlooked it hugely. But then joining Dan, he revolutionized absolutely everything, not just the way I train, but the nutrition side of it as well. And all of a sudden, my body started to change, and then injuries started becoming less prevalent. And all of a sudden, I then had the opportunity to then go on and have a day like London 2012 for me.
That's amazing. And you say that suddenly you noticed changes in your body. What was your diet?
I'd happily eat sugar. I'd have what, and again, when you're in your late teens, early 20s as well, you sort of get away with it a bit.
Of course.
But what I noticed and where I really struggled is I would look at the other athletes that are out on the track. And when we go on a big training camp, you might have 100 other athletes that are training each day. And with the guys in particular, they'd all be training without tops on, whatever else. And I always look at them and go, God, I don't look as good as that. Like, they're all absolutely ripped, and and some be doing my event, some be doing other events, which obviously has an impact. But I would look at it and think, I don't look like that. But I just thought I was just sort of different in that way.
Yeah.
And then when I changed the nutritional side of things, training became more streamlined for me as well, which I think is an important thing. I think when anybody's training, you should always think of the individual, not the masses. You've got to find what works for you. But with the nutrition side of things, all of a sudden, my body started leaning up dramatically as well. I started looking a lot better than I did. And I felt so much better. So I was so body conscious when I was younger.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I was eating correctly for the event I was doing. And I looked a hell of a lot better. And that had a massive thing. But performance became a huge. I was always the nearly guy as a young athlete. I was the guy that had the talent, had the ability, but nobody ever thought I'd win anything. All of a sudden, I changed these factors. And again, the training was a huge part of it as well. But the nutrition side of it, feeling good, fueling my body correctly, I could train better, less injuries. And then when I got onto the runway to perform, be that an Olympics, World Champs, whatever it be, that confidence in you is so much greater because your body feels so much better.
Yeah. And have you taken that, since not being a professional athlete anymore, you will always be to me, but your job has changed over the years and you don't, your level of fitness changes. You don't need to be jumping over great loads of sand. Has your diet changed, or are you still really super aware now of what you eat?
I'm aware I'm aware, but I think because I now know what I need to do in order to get my body into sort of different levels of fitness and shape.
Yeah.
I'm not as on it as I was before because for me as well, food is an important part of my life and I want to enjoy lots of different foods. And
Yeah.
the diet that I had as an athlete, as much as I enjoyed it because it was a process, I basically consumed meat and vegetables.
Yeah.
That was it. And I mean, I'd get to a level of strictness where I'd remove fruit from my diet as well to get, so I
Right.
had zero fructose going. I was basically trying to push myself into ketosis for long periods of time to
Okay.
stay as lean as possible. And that, I think, for the long term, isn't a healthy mindset to have. Now, there was no eating issue with that. I was still full of nutrients, had all what I needed, but I was getting all of that through veg and meat, no carbs of any sort. So you've got to think as well, like people, if you do sport, people always say, do you eat lots of pasta and rice?
Yes.
And you're like, no, none. I have absolutely none at all because I ran for 45 meters in a straight line, take off and land in a sand pit. There was you weren't breaking to any of the energy sources that would mean that you needed to pump your body full of carbohydrate. Now, if I was a long distance runner, then
Yes.
absolutely
Right.
you fuel differently. And that's where I think it's very important, understanding fueling per person. But now, as I say, there's no need for me to do that because I struggle to run very fast at 45 meters in a straight line, and I most certainly would struggle to get off the floor now if you asked me to jump. So I don't need to fuel myself that way,
Right.
but I do stay healthy. And as we mentioned before, food is such a big part of my life. I love cooking. I like cooking different things.
Yeah.
Some of that will be healthy. Some of it maybe not as healthy, shall we say?
A little bit of balance.
Absolutely, yeah. Why
Yeah.
not?
I mean, it's really interesting hearing you say about, the advice as an athlete, and there's information changing all the time because you heard probably back in the 90s, loads of people talking about fueling with carbs and
Yeah.
loading themselves. And actually, that information change that I've seen in my career going on for athletes, and we see that for dogs. And it's actually not just about fueling, because that illusion that fueling with carbs is going to do you good. I mean, protein can be converted into enough glycogen in
Absolutely.
your muscle without you needing to fuel with carbs. That actually, it's also important when it comes to injury, not just because of your impact and carrying the weight, but actually when you're storing fat. I'll hide my own stomach.
Same, yeah.
When you store fat, that's actually just an implication that there is some degree of inflammation already going on in your body. You've got some degree of weakness. So for our pets, if your pet is slightly overweight, don't just ignore that. Consider that actually there may be a degree of inflammation going on. We might be fueling slightly wrong, and actually they may be more predisposed to injuries because not because they're carrying the weight, but because that inflammation is already in their system.
Yeah. So that leads me very nicely on to the fact that you are a dad. You've got 3 kids, and obviously your fur babies, Clunkers, the beautiful Clunkers. Why is she called Clunkers?
The amount of people that do that and ask that question. So, in the TV series Friends, there is an episode where I believe it's Phoebe brings back a dog, and the dog stays in the apartment, and it's to prove that Chandler doesn't have a dog allergy. And the dog was called Clunkers. So Susie had always said she wants to have a little dog like this and wants to call it Clunkers. So we had lost our second Labrador. I used to have 2 Labradors and a big wolf.
Oh,
Our second Labrador just lived forever. He was 16 when he passed away in the end, bless him. It did so well. But then Gus, our wolf dog that we had, who's in Northern Inuit, he needed a friend desperately because he'd basically grown up having these 2 Labradors with
yeah.
him. Then he was down to 1, then it was down to none. So we'd probably spent about 4 months without having 2 dogs. And then we thought, right, we're going to do it. We're going to go. Susie always wanted a Whippet. Right, we're going to go get a Whippet. And then sadly, we lost Gus not long after. So I might say a bit about her, to be totally honest. But
Yes.
no, but it was for me, the dogs are a hugely important part of everything I do. And I think back to, again to the training side of things as well. I used to every single day go out and walk in the woods after a training session with the dogs, and that's how I would decompress
Yes.
after each day. And that for me was a huge part of my training, was mentally getting my head over certain things and around certain things. And I would do that with the dogs. I talk to the dogs like all the time. Like, I mean, I still talk to them now, but when I was training, that was a huge part of it.
Yeah.
So I went through that period of having them. So I will always have a dog of some description, and we are considering another one at the moment.
Oh, and so obviously you feed your kids well, you know about nutrition, and you're a fantastic cook. Obviously, feeding your dog as well. I always thought that I was a really good dog parent, and it wasn't until my dog Rory had a few digestive problems that I looked at what I was feeding her and I went, oh gosh, it's her diet. And I was feeding her dry kibble, dry food, and I thought I was doing the best I could. It said it was packed with nutrients, and it wasn't until I changed her to fresh and now to raw that the difference is amazing. What is your food journey with clunkers?
Well, this is where it is developing now to raw with her. And again, I look at the sort of breed that she is. I mean, every breed I think should have it, of course. But the way she likes to sprint, she needs to stay light and lean anyway, and she loves sprinting around for a bit and then relaxing. I think I now look at what happened with my previous dog, and I definitely question myself because I did the same. I'd go, I mean, it's expensive stuff. The kibble
Yes.
that I've been buying my dogs for years cost a lot of money, and I just assumed because I was spending a lot of money on the kibble that it was good. And then you actually look, and we talk about like our own diets, everything else, and how everybody's now realizing the ultra processed route and how bad that is.
Yeah.
And I've 100% fallen foul of not maybe spending as much time researching what's going into these kibbles as I would do other foods that I eat at home with the kids, because I guess I've completely put my faith in dog food to say, well, if I'm spending a lot of money and it says it's got all these great things in it, surely it does. Which, like an idiot, I mean, a lot of people say that. I mean, you go and read like a very high sugar filled yogurt, for example, say, oh, there's zero fat in it. Then you look on the back, again, full of sugar and everything, you start going, actually, what they've done
Yes.
is they've taken the good stuff out. They now pumped it full of sugar so it's palatable. They're surely doing that with dog food. And I hadn't really thought of it in that way.
And so many other things within that processing, because when you take the fat out, in order for that yogurt to feel the same texturally, they will add other things like guar gums. That's a bacterial gum that goes in to make it smoother. But actually, that is a gut disruptor in its own right. So that creates inflammation in your gut. And they don't tell you that,
Yeah.
but it's all about the taste and making it more addictive. There is still a lot of kibble foods out there that will use grains and things like that. And you might say, well, I don't see guar gums in grains. You definitely will see it in canned foods.
Right.
Okay, so all of those lovely posh cans that you're thinking
Yeah.
is great. They've got a glossy gravy on. They will often have, those gums added to make it appealing to the owner. Strangely enough,
So funny.
and texturally to some degree to the dogs, but it's not going to be the best thing for their guts. The same then you come to those expensive kibbles. They can be as expensive as you like when you come to baking the biscuit with the ingredients, but actually the baking that we've talked about before, the acrylamides are known to have problems. The AGEs, we call them advanced glycation end products, that are formed in that cooking process. They are problematic when it comes to the dog's guts. So, yeah, you can really look at the most expensive kibble foods and actually still have some out of sight health issues occurring.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Brendan doesn't berate us for it.
No,
He's been very
no,
good at
he's
sort
been
of
very nice about it, yeah.
They're
understanding
out of sight.
that,
You know,
well, you
you're
know,
not to know what you don't know.
no,
No, of
and
course.
as you say, we're trusting. You see these things and you think you're doing the best for your pet. So is Clunkers on has she started a raw
She
diet?
has now started the raw diet, yeah. And one of the things with her as well, that she can be really picky with her food.
Yeah.
And that's something that, again, I just sort of thought, I mean, look at her, she sits there quite regal, thinking that she is the center of attention at
She
all
is.
times. So I just thought maybe she's just being a bit picky. And I'd gone from 2 chocolate Labradors that literally, some of the things I've seen in their mouths, good Lord. Like, and again, the Gus, the Northern Inuit as well, similarly, like, he would just eat food, and it might have been because he grew up as a puppy around these 2 Labradors, straight in, whatever it is, they would eat it. We've then gone to her, and she is the weirdest thing to say. Anything, if you were eating, anything dropped on the floor, you'd be so careful because a dog would be on you.
Yeah.
Now, she just sort of looks at it like, ugh, I'm not having that. Absolutely not. And then she sort of walks away. So it's really interesting having a slightly fussier dog. But with the raw, quite happy, gets in there. I mean, she's a much slower eater than the big dogs were anyway, but she sort of look at you, and she's quite a pleased look. This morning as well, it was about 6 o'clock this morning, sort of took her out and for a really quick walk, and then gave her a little bit of food after, just before we left, sorry, and she sort of looked up, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm happy with this."
Yeah.
Carried on. And it's just a different thought process. But what I like is the fact that she doesn't seem to be as picky eating the raw food
No.
as she has been with different kibbles. And this is the thing with these kibbles, they cost a lot of money. If they don't like it, you have to buy a new
Yes,
one.
exactly.
And that's what's quite problematic, I found as well. So trying to get her, will figure out what works for her, but early doors, she
And
seems really
you've got to
happy.
remember that appetite for them is very much around fats and proteins. You know, the studies show if you were to just distribute reasonably fed dogs out there, even in a wild sort of feral situation, they will select the fats and proteins first. It's only when they're really starving that they'll start to try and scavenge the carbohydrate stuff that's maybe around on the streets.
Right.
You know, out in India, they've done these studies, and actually, they will still preferentially take anything that's fatty and protein. Those kibbles will often put something on them to try and make them appetizing. It's like almost having to use the sweet shop effect to make them taste better than
Yeah.
cardboard.
And
So
and were you worried in any way when you transferred to raw? Did you have, because for me, I had these sort of weird misconceptions that have been really all the myths have been busted for me. I have to say, I'm a proper convert now. But I was worried that, oh gosh, if I how do I defrost it in time,
Yeah.
and will it cause all this bacteria, and are we going to get sick, or you know what I mean?
The bacterial side of things, salmonella or whatever it might
Yes,
be, because I've got kids as well, right? That are
of
young, and like
course.
4 is the youngest one that's in the house. And even though I tried not to, they will very happily just go in the fridge and try and get themselves extra bits and bobs. You sort of, the dog food's in a area where really but you never know, because I mean, it's not like they can try and eat it. What I mean is, like, put their hand on it, then pick something else up or
Yes.
whatever else,
Yeah.
and that fear of there being potential problems, but then understanding and learning the processes that you get to that point where it's then packaged in front of you, to know that testing is being taken place,
Yeah.
and there's lots going on to ensure that there is no risk of that happening. You just feel a lot better about it. And fundamentally, and again, just since realizing how bad some of the kibbles can be out there and reading about it, I feel significantly happier about the idea of her being on a raw diet. Just, I don't know, you look at an animal as well, and you sort of think it just feels much closer to nature than, I mean, I've been in a few forests and stuff all over the world. I've never noticed an animal with an oven. So
Exactly.
I just feel like when they're not sticking them on a baking tray oven and then feeding them out, are they? And when we talk about as well, like, let's say, with the labs and my Northern Inuit as well, I said they'd have lots of different things around. But if they ever found any, it's a bit gross, but any, like a carcass of an animal or whatever else, like we're surrounded by deer, like they'd happily have a nibble, happily
Yes.
have a nibble,
Yeah.
and I think that clearly shows that even though they're domesticated animals, that level of what they're interested in is still inherently within them.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting you talking because you as you say, you've got young kids and you start you educate yourself as to know what what's good for you to eat as an athlete, and just as an everyday human. And then you've got these kids that you suddenly have to look after. And you know, when you don't know, you are feeding them cereal or you're feeding them yogurts that you think are good for them, and all this apple juice. I remember giving my daughter apple juice
Yeah, a lot
because
of
I
sugar,
thought
isn't it?
that's what that was good for her. And it's only then you start really looking into it. And the same with your pets, as you say. Now you're like, well, it makes sense
Yeah.
to feed her raw.
Absolutely, and again, it comes down to I think the faith that people just blindly put into what you're seeing, and again, I think you assume because anybody that has a pet generally loves their animal, like, probably more than they love a lot of humans, so you would assume that the companies that are making the food feel the same way, and then you start realizing probably a lot out there, maybe it's just about making money
Yeah.
and not thinking about the dog.
We are seeing more and more clients coming in really conscious of what they're eating, like you are as an athlete. Even if they're just managing a family of, 2 children, they're really much more conscious already. And actually, a lot of them are seeing their fur childs and going, actually, I want something better for
Yeah.
Yeah.
them. And so they are making that leap, which is sort of overtaking the medical professions, both veterinary and human, let's
Yeah.
say, that from a point of what they want out of food. There's some great books out there. We've talked about ultra processed people. They read something like that. They realize some of the additives that are going in there, really to make those foods addictive, to sell them so that you go back and eat more of it. And then they read the label on the back of the food packet for their pets, and they see exactly the same ingredients that they're being told shouldn't be fed to their kids.
Yeah.
So it's really, I think it is a journey that a lot of people are going on, and power to those people for saying, I want to change.
Yeah. And I wanted to sorry, Greg, I just wanted to say that on a sad note, a very sad note, and but I think it's made you probably really consider how you feed your dogs, is that you said you lost your lovely
I did. I lost Gussie, yeah, on Northern Inuit, yeah, just over a year ago now. Was it April last year? And it was, yeah, it's still something that I'm not good with today. It's like
no.
it was a funny old thing because I'd lost 2 dogs before. When I lost my first dog, Dexter, I literally cried for 3 days. I had this awful moment as well. I never forget it. So we'd literally just been put down. Somebody came to the house. I was like, I can't deal with anybody at the moment. Like, so I
No.
like bolted out the back gate into the woods. And I'll never forget it. It's this one really lovely chap. I don't know his name. He had 2 Labradors himself. And literally the moment I walked out, I came face to face with him. And I'd been holding it together. And he went, "Hi, hello, how are you? You're right." And he's this really like really sort of posh bloke in the woods. Hello, like all that is. And I just broke down, like started
Oh,
crying my eyes out. And I just remember him looking really. I don't even know his name, but I'd bumped into the
yes.
woods. That's often I knew his dogs, I don't know
No, the
anybody's
dogs'
names in the
names.
woods. I
It's
know
just the
everybody's
dogs,
dogs' names,
not the
absolutely.
owners. Yeah.
None of the owners. And I just remember like crying at him and him just looking really awkward and thinking like, got to pull yourself together. That was the first one for 3 days. With Murphy's, as I say, he went on till he was 16, and probably from 14 to 16, he was still super happy, just became less mobile.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things that you'd sort of look at, and he had like growths forming on him and stuff like fatty lumps. So we had him, first time that happened, absolute panic, took him
I
into the
know.
vet. I was like, he's got a lump, got a big lump. And they just like, no, it's just a fatty lump, it's a Labrador. Like, it's very common. But towards the end, you sort of, that last week in particular, you started to think, okay, I think it's coming now. And I felt like I had time to process it. With Gus, it was the weirdest thing. We went on holiday, came back a week, 10 days later or so, and he'd been being looked after. He'd stopped eating and he suddenly just was not himself at all. And it had gone from the day I left on holiday, we took him for a big long walk, as I did every day pretty much. And because
Yeah.
he was a big, like, he loved running. Like, when he was a bit younger, we used to take him for like 20, 30-mile bike rides and stuff in the woods. And he would just
Wow.
like, oh, it was the most incredible thing to watch. And as he got a little bit older, say he would go for less, but still, I mean, like they say, he'd chase the deer, play with other dogs. He just always full of life. And literally, it felt like overnight, it went from Gussie was absolutely fine to a vet telling me I had to be put down. And to try and process that was like, and it just turned 10. And Northern Inuits, anybody looks at it, generally 12 to 15 is quite normal for
Right.
that breed
Okay.
dog. So I still thought we're going to have years left with Gus. Like,
Yes.
no
Yeah.
issue at all. Um, So trying to get my head around, and then you start thinking, and he had cancer, and his sort of stomach cancer, it sort of spread around his body. We'd had no signs. We were talking before briefly. I sort of said the only sign that now I think back is he'd basically pooed in the house twice, and they were quite white and chalky,
Right.
and he'd never done that before. But I say it was still quite cold. That would have been in the March, and we'd had a few cold, even though he loved the cold, but I just thought maybe he just didn't want to go outside or
Yeah.
whatever. And he was 10, just turned 10. So I was like, maybe that's the sign of him getting a bit older, but clearly it wasn't. And then you start thinking like, well, we live in the country. I'm really lucky to live where we live. Every single day, you had this vast expanse to run around in. Like, he was well loved, had all that sort of stuff. So why and what possibly could have happened? And then I'd think about what I was feeding him. And
Yeah.
then that straight away to me, I was like, for the most amazing 10 years with him, you just think like, probably should have or could have done better, but didn't realize, say, spending all this money on these kibbles, but actually then you learn and look into it, you're like, God, probably for the amount of running and everything he was doing, he needed something else.
Mm.
Like, almost certainly. And look, I mean, he might have been predisposed to it. Maybe it was, I don't know enough of his family history. Maybe that did have, but you 100% start questioning everything like that. And the only thing I could put my finger on, a potential reason, was the fact that maybe he was eating some of the.
Yeah, and it's part of our journey, isn't it? That we go through life having these challenges, and from it, at least you looked then at nutrition going forwards. But it's really hard to then start beating yourself up about the stuff you didn't know.
Where I also really struggle to get my head around it is that dogs always seem to live longer, and we sort of look through things through history, and dogs living for, I don't know, the tombstone, a pet cemetery, 20 odd years old or whatever. Is this a trend that we're seeing now, that dogs are dying younger? And is cancer now one of the main, is that a big part of that?
I mean, look, cancer is obviously a concern to everybody. The C word, and everybody gets really scared, and it's become a prominent disease for people to note about. But it is also tragic that actually the one other species on the planet that is suffering rates in excess now of humans is our beloved dogs, and that trend fits with when we move to high processed foods. And you can see that with obesity rates, you can see that with cancer rates, you can see that with immune mediated diseases, autoimmune disease, and we see that all combined together on the graphs, just continuing to climb when we were in, for kibble foods. Then you see a lot of the research coming out now where they're doing direct diet comparisons between raw and ultra processed foods. And you can see that those diseases that I've just mentioned are all reversed by feeding raw. So it makes an impact, and it is tragic, and but it's one of those things. It's a lesson learned by the profession, a lesson learned by society. We're seeing it in humans. We're trying to make all of the turnarounds around diabetes, because of the type 2 diabetes epidemic that we're suffering as a nation at the moment. And we're trying to make changes.
Yeah, again,
Mind blowing, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And again, we're just like with Gussie's situation, just like, God, I wish I'd have thought of it or known of it earlier.
Yeah.
Like, you just, such a healthy dog as he was for all of his life until that last little bit. You just sort of think maybe it would have been a bit longer, but yeah, brutal. But
you can't beat yourself up about stuff that you didn't know.
well, true. He'd loved it in here as well. It'd have been a right pain in the backside because he was massive. He weighed about 48 kilos, super tall. We'd have just, everything would have been knocked over. We'd have a far different pod, as Elliot would have been.
I think it would have been
yes, it would have been a lot of that as well. He just would stand in front of him and just lick your face. He was so that would have been quite good fun.
It would. He's here in spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. Murph, up until he was 14, was still like charging around the woods. So his last couple of years, he would plod next to me on the walk rather than run. But you just sort of think like, well, clearly he's having a great life.
Yeah.
Again, he's got all of this. He eats well. Again, that expensive blimmin' kibble, he's eating that. He seems to be doing all right. And again, he went on and on and on. I mean, it was like a running joke, because when he was young, everybody was thought Dexter, the other one, he was super lean, like proper looked like a working lab in that way. Whereas Murphy was always a bit chunkier, no matter what we did. But he just lived on forever, it seems. And it was.
And I would say to people, look, we did this whole thing with cigarettes. You know, you will find a 90-year-old that still smokes cigarettes and has done 20 a day for all of their lives, and they think, well, you know, it's never done me any harm. But actually, we know from the science that generally, for the majority of people, it will cause an issue, usually before you're 40. And that's the real worrying
Yeah.
aspect. And, you know, therefore, the same, you know, just think where they could have been if we're not giving them kibble all the time,
Yeah.
you know, from a health point of view. So it's a difficult one. You're always going to have exceptions
Yes,
that
of
where,
course.
you know, Murphy will carry on, you know, doing his thing. But then there's always going to be then the counter to that, which
Yeah.
is the majority will have some issues.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you then build up an awareness and you
Yeah.
think, you
of
know
course.
what? I'm not going to take that chance.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not taking that chance with clunkers.
Yeah, it's just always the worst thing, isn't it? Looking back when you lose a dog a bit younger, you sort of think like, well, maybe, and I don't know, of course, but maybe if
No.
he was eating so differently, he would still be here. And that's where it's like really tough because the amount of love and everything else, it's such a big part of the family to then suddenly like, it just felt literally like that to be gone. You think like,
Yeah.
well, maybe if I'd spent more time on it, like, see, there's just a lot of guilt, isn't there, I think, on that one.
There
And in
is.
certain, in mine, there definitely was. But if I'd have spent more time researching it before, maybe I would have made that change significantly earlier and Gussie would have been all right. So it's
Yeah.
yeah,
And
it's a
I
tough
think
one.
you can't berate yourself, and we all only can do what we can do. And there is, Brendan was telling me earlier about the fact that if you were thinking, oh, you might want to introduce raw to your dog and you want to, you know, improve their quality of life and their length of life, then you don't have to do fully raw. You know, that you can think about mixing it with dry food, that just that little extra bit of raw food makes a huge difference, doesn't it,
Yes,
Brendan?
I mean, the studies show again, 25% will make a health impact. So literally, as little as a quarter of their food being fresh will make a health impact. So for
Wow.
those people that aren't, you know, I don't want to fully embrace raw, or I can't afford to fully embrace raw because of that perception in their heads, then you know, at least if you try and make 25% of it a fresh food, you're going to make some health impacts. Obviously, the more fresh you give, the better the impact.
Yeah.
When you go to raw, you see then all of the improvements that you'll get in energy, what's happening with their gut, less gut upsets, you know, better digestion, you know, better sleep patterns, you know, all of these other health impacts that we start to see. So those are the important things. The more you can do, the better. And then as soon as you get into that greater health, then the cost of health goes down. So
Also,
the value starts to build, that it's not just about the cost of the food, but it's actually about the value to their quality of life.
Yeah.
interesting. More of a question than anything else to yourself is that have we seen it even within vets and everything else that the change of thought process? So I'm just basically wondering, has there or was there a big push in the veterinary world where it's pushed to kibbles, maybe led by like similar in the health world, smoking obviously was once prescribed by doctors. Was it a thing where it was pushed by companies in order to get us to believe that that was the right thing to do? And is it now changing?
Yeah, look, the worry that we have is that somebody says, I'm going to feed raw, and they go to a supermarket and they buy a chicken breast, and, you know, little Fifi the Chihuahua is just getting chicken breast every single day, and they perceive that that therefore is a balanced diet. Okay, and absolutely advocate, and Bella+Duke would advocate that is not a truly raw diet, because you're not including anything else other than just the breast meat.
Yeah.
And there's not going to be all of the nutrients they need within that breast meat.
Just like you when you feed your kids and you're giving them as much variety as possible. You know, I don't know how you run your household food wise, but you know, I'm constantly sort of writing lists and trying to work out if I'm not meal planning on a Sunday, then I'll do it at some point in the week so that I know what variety the house is having. Same for you, I'm
Yeah, I
sure.
do very similar. Yes, yeah, yeah. Try and work out. I want to make sure first of all they're eating different things, trying different, and we've done that from a really young age. I'd say I'm really fortunate with all three of the kids that because they were introduced to lots of different foods from a young age, they don't turn their nose up as much as maybe other, and actually involving them in the cooking process.
Yes.
Now, this is something that I found, and obviously a bit more difficult to do that with a dog, of
Of
course.
course.
But with
We
the
could try
kids,
it, Greg.
give it a go. Why not? Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, get that going. That'd be, well,
Finding rabbits.
it'd be interesting. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the tour. I can send her. She can do half the work. I mean, perfect. But with the kids, it was a case of getting them involved, getting them cooking as well, and be that with a plastic knife to cut the mushrooms because they can do that. But all of a sudden, because they have that feeling of they were involved in it and a sort of a bit of pride behind it, that they've eaten really, really well. As I say, we can't quite do that with. I mean, to be fair, if I let her, I'm sure she probably could catch the odd creature that
I'm sure.
we could cook. But I don't fancy that, if I'm totally honest. I'll leave Bella+Duke to that.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's the great thing, is that actually if you look at what the variety that Bella+Duke have, and the the fact there is so much variety, it's sort of left to them to do the hard work, but that you're doing the best you can
yeah,
for
and
your
it
dog.
is interesting actually speaking to people. Actually, the person that drove me in this company, and we sort of the same person always ends up driving me in, and he does raw with. He's got the what's the really huge, not Burmese Mountain Dog, was another one, Lindenberger.
Okay, yeah,
What's the
Leonberger.
Leonberg? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, one of those. And um they feed her a raw diet and have done their previous dogs as well. But when you actually talk about the process of organising it, when they go into how much time they spend it, and they're in a fortunate position. They're boys quite a bit older now, so they don't need to worry as much, and they've got a bit more time. But I sort of thinking like, it's a lot. That's an awful lot of planning, and it's so difficult. I've got 3 young kids and everything else. I'm trying
Yes,
I'm here, there, and everywhere all the time.
of course.
Removing that level of stress from it yourself, because I mean, like, again, let's say they have the time, it's fine, but the amount of work that goes into it, I say I don't probably have, and that's why kibble probably is as popular as
It's
it is, right?
convenience.
Because it is so
It's
convenient,
a
and that
fast
it's
food ready
dreadful to
meal
think.
done for you, and
Yeah.
that's
It's a dreadful
what
thought
we try to
process.
avoid now.
Yeah, because
Absolutely.
you think if we're doing the same process, right, we'd just go to a fast food restaurant every single day, but we know that's bad as humans.
Yes.
Yet in our heads, it's like, that's fine. We'll give them the biscuits because that's what the dog food company's given us. Like it's funny, isn't it, that there's a level of disconnect from us as humans to dogs, but knowing that arguably a dog probably needs a lot more protein and everything else. Because that's what they were. That's what
So
they
it all becomes a compromise, and that's the great thing when you've got a done for you meal such as the Bella+Duke completes. It's horses for courses.
Yes.
You know, if somebody's got the time, brilliant. Invest the time. You know, there's ways of getting you the individual ingredients. But if you are halfway there and you really want just the maximum health benefits, but with the minimal hassle, then there's some done for yous out there.
So we're talking about varieties of food and how for us that's so important, and it's the same for dogs. And with Bella+Duke, there are so many different varieties. But what makes up a bowl of food?
Yeah, so whether it's the done for you varieties that we've got for Bella+Duke, you know, we're drawing different ingredients. So the main part is going to be the protein and meat that's within that food, which is obviously as carnivores really important for them. It's going to be their main energy driver, etc. For their health. It's got loads of other nutrients within that for the fats, special fats, the essential amino acids that they need. But there's part of that is also bone material, and people say, well, that's just indigestible, you know, it's not, it's just cheap stuff that you're packing the food with. But no, that's really important when it comes to the collagen is a great fiber source for carnivores. So for their gut function and their gut microbiome and water retention within the fecal matter, that can be really important as well as obviously some minerals within that. And then you've got some of the organs. So lots of people go a bit icky about, you know, the thought of kidney and liver and, you know, heart and those sort of things. And it's more thinking haggis than they're thinking, nice foods. But they have packed with really good vitamins and nutrient values for the diet. So we add that in the dish. So those are all of the sort of meaty side of things that we look at. And, you know, it is hard sometimes that we will end up with not enough fiber within those diets because we're not including skin and feather and fur And
All the
because
good stuff.
people would think, oh, that's a bit icky. So we do utilize some vegetable matter for that, and that's where the carrot and some of the brassicas come in. So that's the cauliflower, the broccoli, the kale, those health things that we think of putting in smoothies and stuff for us. They can be really important. With both a vegetable fiber, but actually they also deliver a lot of what we call polyphenols. So you may have heard of things that our gut bacteria can then act on to create their own nutrients. And that's a really important factor for our health and theirs. So that's why we start to add a few bits like that. Always interested. People think that fruit is really, really healthy. And then we've got a little bit on the blueberries that we add in because they're known to be packed with antioxidants, again, polyphenols.
It's interesting as well. You're saying all of those. You've basically listed the diet that I used to have. So, and again, even with the fruits that I sort of mentioned before, that even when I was getting really sort of trying to really lean up, ready to compete, a lot of fruits I'd remove sugar pretty much in its entirety. But then you'd stick more to berry-based fruits because they're much lower in sugar. So you'd have that with, say, a yogurt or something like full-fat Greek yogurt or something. But again, meat and veg, and most of the veg that you've just named is pretty much, if you went and saw me, say, in the afternoon of a competition I was competing that night, if you looked at my plate, you would pretty much see meat and vegetables exactly how you listed. And exactly what I was doing was, I guess, especially with clunkers, very similar. We're running very fast for a short amount of time, and then waiting around. And actually, when you compare, we sort of laugh about the fact that she doesn't do an awful lot when she's not running. But on the days of competition for me, and in and around training, the idea is get off your feet. Like, that's the thing, you
Yeah,
rest.
yeah, of
And
course.
again, I mean, I guess for a dog, I mean, it's sort of naturally occurring within them. If they were going out to hunt, and we still see it now when you go to Africa or whatever else, you watch a lion or whatever else,
Yeah.
they rest, they hunt, they eat, they rest again. So it's very interesting. The diet's exactly the same. And actually the process of how I used to compete is exactly the same. So I was effectively a dog.
Yeah, clunkers is your spirit
Yeah,
animal.
she is exactly that.
I'd
She's
prefer to
exactly
say
that.
they're more like an athlete.
Yeah. And she looks far more like an athlete than I do. But no, it's fascinating that, again, for professional sport, and especially in the event that I did, we know that is what works. And I wasn't the only one that did ate how I ate. It was that's you understand nutrition, you learn how it works for the body. And it's very interesting that for a dog, I ate like a dog.
Yeah.
There we are. I ate like a dog.
And for all of our pets, it's not just those that think, oh, they're athletic and it's all about, running miles and miles and things like that. But actually, a lot of that diet is all about fixing. It's about mending your body. So it stops the little injuries. But if they have a little injury, they can fix quicker.
Yeah.
And so even for your collie that's running around or your Labrador that's running around, those dietary changes can be really important. Not because you're expecting them then to be, doing the 100 meters in 10 seconds flat, but just because they need those nutrients to heal and not be so inflamed.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it makes complete. It is identical. Collagen, protein, all those sorts of things. Exactly what my body craved, wanted, and when we fed it, worked out all right at certain times. So clearly, it's the right thing.
Something I have to ask you, Greg, because I know you've only just started feeding clunkers raw.
Yeah.
But there is one thing that changes quite quickly, I've noticed, and it's poo.
It is. It's poo. And do you know what? I feel like as pet owners, we're probably all a little bit obsessed about poo, aren't we?
Yes, because we're constantly picking it up.
Yes, exactly. Because picking up, because and when it's of a consistency, shall we say, which isn't conducive with picking up, it's less than ideal. And that's an interesting thing with clunkers as well. Like, pretty much straight off the bat, we notice that better formed poo, and just less. So the one thing I found, I say, we've bounced around because, again, as you can sort of see the way she is, if she doesn't like something, she lets you know and she won't eat it. So we bounce around, but the sort of how frequent she was going to toilet, and again, unformed, everything else, it was a bit gross, to be totally honest. But straight away she seems, it's less, it's less frequent,
Smaller,
and it's,
isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's better forms and everything else. So I mean, I can only sort of deduce from that clearly something's working in her gut a bit better. and it's not as messy.
Yeah, well, from a point of view, food that's there, better digestion, better assimilation of the food, so there's less left to have to come out. We obviously need some because we want some good gut function with the fibers, etc. But when you're dealing with some of the kibbles, which are packed with, sometimes up to 80% kibble is made from carbohydrate grains, you're going to have just lots of extra starches that are going through the gut. Gut's not going to be able to use all of that. They don't have anywhere in their gut to ferment that vegetable matter. As dogs, their gut is only 2.5 times their body length, opposed to ours, which can be anywhere up to 8 to 11 times our body length. So we actually have more space to ferment foods and actually the bacteria to produce nutrients for you. Our herbivores, it's up to 18 times their body length, and they have big chambers to produce food from that plant material. So that's great for them, but it doesn't mean that we or our dogs can simulate that. And so what happens? All of that plant material has to come out the back end.
She's been looking, she gave me Lady Diana eyes, Princess Diana eyes, and then she looked to you and got up.
Straighten her legs. You see
Oh
that as well.
gosh, she is
I
adorable.
think
I'm
it
in
was
love.
all the talk about ablutions.
Yes, exactly. So how dare you?
Just wanted to ask you, what's your favourite thing about clunkers?
Do you know what? Having a dog and you can sort of see what she's just gone straight to sleep. Whatever. Generally, she'll want to sleep on you, but there's this level of affection. Again, with my big dogs, I mean, when they were showing affection, you were like sort of swamped and you couldn't breathe because they're so massive. But with her, the fact that she just climbs on you when she wants attention, she'll literally walk up your chest and she sort of stares down on you with her front paws on your shoulders and gives a little lick on the nose, and actually, which then always turns into a little nibble on the nose as well, which
Oh,
is quite funny. But she's just such a sweet, kind-hearted creature. She loves the children as well, and she's just sort of there, and everything about her just oozes like love and everything else, which is so nice to have. It's nice to have a dog that can sit on the sofa and you can sit with her. When we had Gus, again, I miss him dearly, but at least I have a bit of it's the only thing I can take. I've got a bit of sofa space, but I'll be honest, I'd happily give up that space to have him
oh,
back. But no, she's just the sweetest, loveliest little thing, and she's quite happy. She goes sprinting for an hour or so, then she just wants to sleep all the time.
oh,
It's just lovely.
yeah,
Just such a
yeah. I think we can learn so much from our little furry
I would
friends,
happily
can't
run
we?
for an hour, just for an hour. I'd happily run around for an hour a day and then sleep for 23. I mean, that'd be a great life, wouldn't it? Imagine that.
Eat, sleep, and run around. That's pretty much what you do.
No, it was, yes. Yeah, exactly. Actually, take me back to when that was my life. That was definitely far less complicated.
Oh, thank you, Greg. It's just so lovely to talk to you, and Clunkers has won my heart.
I expected her to be a little bit more active. I thought she was going to walk around a bit more, but there you are. She's done. Thank you so much for having us, though.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you so much for joining us here today on For Pet's Sake. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can catch our next episode. And of course, don't forget to follow Bella+Duke on all the usual channels like Instagram and TikTok. If you're considering a new diet for your pet, head over to belladduke.com to get your own personalised nutrition plan.